We continue our series this morning about a woman who has made Aroostook shine in the eyes of those who have read her wonderful work. Glenna Johnson Smith of Presque Isle has had 2 books published, both after she turned 90 years old. Today she is 96, but there was a time when Glenna was younger, much younger.
21. I got out of college, I got married, and I moved to Aroostook on a potato farm. And I knew zilch about how to be a farm wife, but I learned.
She also taught school in Aroostook County.
I taught 7th and 8th grades in Easton, and then later taught English in the high school in Presque Isle. Loved my teaching. I just loved working with the kids.
Glenna Johnson Smith has been a contributor to Aroostook County's Echoes magazine for many of the 25 years that wonderful publication has existed. An old woman who has proven it is never too late. Her first book was published when she was 90. Today she is 96. And we'll feature more about Glenna Johnson Smith tomorrow morning at the same time. As we continue our series featuring people who make us look good, let's resume our conversation with Glenna Johnson Smith of Presque Isle. Glenna was born in 1920 in Hancock County. She moved to Aroostook when she was 21 to become a potato farmer's wife in Easton. But now, 76 years later, one can still detect traces of her down east accent as she tells her stories.
You ever hear of a cereus? It was a plant that blossomed every 100 years, I think. When you had one in the family, you waited for it to blossom, and everybody for miles around got together because it blossomed in the night and then died before morning. It was just a one-night thing. I can remember, and it smelled heavenly. But it blossomed in the evening. Everybody in our village was there watching it. Then it died before morning. Didn't have much of a life.
These are typical of the tales Glenna Johnson Smith would write about, the social history of the people and times that surrounded her long life. She is 96 years old now.
We had a man in our village who was an old bachelor, and he was grimy and greasy and black, and the only thing he did was pitch horseshoes. And then he cleaned himself up and bought a car, and he got himself a mail-order wife. We always called her his Sears Roebuck wife, but it wasn't Sears Roebuck, but it was an advertisement in a magazine. And so when he went up to Tunk Station to pick her up, she came on the train. They'd never seen each other. I can't imagine. They had a good marriage, stayed married.
Writing stories has been a big part of Glenna's life, whether for Echoes magazine, the 2 books that she wrote and were published after she turned 90, or for various groups she has belonged to over the years. Glenna Johnson Smith has been the light of many a writer's life in Aroostook County, and we'll conclude our visit with her tomorrow morning at the same time.
We continue our series talking with exceptional people who make us look good, feel good, and or sound good. Glenna Johnson Smith became a published author at the age of 90. Before that, she was a school teacher in Easton and Presque Isle. She has been a contributor to Aroostook County's Echo magazine for the 25 years that wonderful publication has existed.
The editor, Kathy Olmsted, she said, "Why don't you send me some things to publish?" And there was something in every Echoes after that. She kept me writing. Old woman has always been kind of a dirty word. People say, "Oh, you're acting like an old woman." I'm old and I'm a woman, and I don't see anything wrong with being an old woman. So I wrote in defense of it.
But Glenna Johnson Smith was writing long before she turned 90. Back when she was a school teacher, she remembers writing about her boss.
The editor, Kathy Olmsted, she said, "Why don't you send me some things to..." We had a superintendent of schools who was very, very absent-minded. I wrote about him.
And just how absent-minded was this guy?
His wife taught at the high school, and he was superintendent, and one day her car broke down, and she was walking home, and he drove right by her, walked by, waved his hand. He said, I knew I'd seen that woman somewhere. And so I wrote about that. I think everybody should write their own stories, because no two are alike. What's our social history? To me, social history is a more true history. That's what we all are, ordinary people, and we all should write our own stories.
We'll talk more with 96-year-old Glenna Johnson Smith again tomorrow morning at this time. Today we conclude our visit with Presque Isle author Glenna Johnson Smith. The 96-year-old former school teacher had 2 books published after the age of 90, but her fascination with words, well, it dates back to childhood.
As an only child, I loved words. I used to play with a dictionary, go up and down the streets and see how many words I had heard, and I've always loved words. I never worry about plagiarism. If people want to copy my stuff, what the hell? They won't get much.
They won't get much? Well, we know a large number of people who would disagree with that, Glenna. You have contributed a lot in the way of history, humor, humanity, and color to the body of Maine literature. That said and meant, Glenna is still insisting she is just ordinary.
2 most common names in the world, Smith and Johnson. In this country, they're the 2 most common names. So I always say I am typical, extremely ordinary person.
And we disagree with that, too. Glenna Johnson Smith of Presque Isle, a person making us look and feel good.